Hey, it's your tutor Courtney Waterman, lover of anime, manga, and math. And this is another session of Tutor Me Senpai. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Courtney, and this is another session of Tutor Me Senpai. Today we're jumping into an 8th grade topic, identifying functions using the vertical line test. If you have any questions about what we see today, or maybe even some of your own homework, feel free to put it in the comment box below. Or you can visit me on Facebook at Tutor Me Senpai. If you find this video helpful, feel free to leave a like. It really helps the channel. And also hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you know exactly when I drop my next one. Without further ado, let's jump into our questions for today. So today's question says, state whether each graph represents a function. So what we're going to do today is we're going to actually answer all 3 of these, because once we know how to do one, the next one becomes a lot easier. So we're going to tackle all 3 pretty much at the same time, but I'm going to show you how we're going to do that beforehand. So what we have here is a rough sketch of the 3 graphs that you saw just a minute ago. The numbers are not super important, but I want you to see the shapes, because that is going to help us identify whether these graphs are functions. Now, you can graph almost anything. You can graph something that looks like that. You can graph something that kind of goes on and keeps on going. Just because you can graph something doesn't make it automatically a function. Now you might be wondering, what is a function? Well, in very simple terms, a function is just a relationship between something we call input and something we call output. Here's a visual to kind of help things come along. Let's say we have this toy guitar. The input in this case will be these buttons. And the output is what happens when you press a button, the sound they make. For example, if I press the purple button, I get this sound. If I press the blue button, I get this sound. So the input in this example would be the buttons that I press, and the output would be the sound that's assigned to each button. But just because each of these buttons will give me a different sound doesn't make it automatically a function. What makes it a function is that when I press the button, no matter how many times I press the same button, I get the same output, the same noise in this case. So if I press this, if I keep pressing it, I should get the same sound every time. If I go to another button and press that multiple times, no matter how many times I press it, I should get the same sound. Go to another one, the same thing. Same thing. So that's what it means for a graph to be a function. The input has only one output assigned to it. In this case, the buttons only have one sound associated with each one. Something else cool about functions is that just because we have the restriction of one input to one output, or one button to one sound, it doesn't mean the reverse is true. We can have a few different buttons give us the same sound. So for example, let's say purple button gave us sound A. As long as purple only gives us sound A, it doesn't matter if pink also gives us sound A. It's just that each button only gives us one sound, but they don't have to be necessarily different. When a button gives us 2 sounds, it's no longer a function. But 2 buttons giving us the same sound is perfectly fine to be a function. So in this case, if I was to turn this off and turn it back on, I get this sound. If I was to do this, I get the same sound. That is perfectly legal and fine for a function. Because they're 2 different inputs, I can get the same output. That's not a problem. The problem comes is if I have one of these give me 2 different outputs. For example, you just heard what sound this made. If I was to do it again, That's a little bit different from the first one. And if I do it again, so that means this one lever here has a few different songs associated with it. Therefore, this guitar as a whole is definitely not a function. All of these, yes, only have one. This has one. But this has at least 4. As long as there's one input that has more than one output, your whole graph is considered not a function. So let's get back to our examples at hand. Well, how do we determine if there is a place on our graph that has multiple outputs for a single input? That's where we use something called the vertical line test. And the vertical line test is quite simply what the name says. We draw a vertical line. Not a horizontal, not to be confused, a vertical line, straight up and down. And what that vertical line test does is, depending on where we put it, we get to see, all right, does it hit the graph that we have multiple times? If a vertical line was to hit a graph multiple times, that means whatever x value that's associated with this line has multiple y values, therefore has multiple outputs, thus making it not a function. So if we look at this first graph, if I draw a vertical line like this, does this vertical line intersect this graph more than once? No. It's only at that point. If I keep going and draw more vertical lines, does it intersect multiple times? No, it's only here. If I keep going and hit this point here, does it intersect multiple times? Yes. You got this point and you got this point. I don't even need to keep going, but let's say I do one more. Does it intersect multiple times? Yes. This point and this point. That means whatever these x values are, it doesn't matter for this example, but whatever these x values are, they have 1, 2 different outputs. So if I was to input this x value, let's say 1, into my function, instead of always going to one value, it wouldn't know which one to choose. Therefore, this is not a function. So we look at this one, we move on to our second example. Let's say we draw a vertical line here. Does it intersect multiple times? No. All right, let's say we do one here. Does it intersect multiple times? No. How about here? Does it intersect multiple times? No. Is there anywhere on this graph that looks like it might intersect multiple times? No. For this graph, if you were to draw a vertical line for each point on it, you would only hit this graph one time per x value. That means this is a function. Going from our first two examples, you can kind of see where we're going with this third one. Is this a function? No. This is not a function, and that's because pretty much almost anywhere but the extreme ends, if I was to draw this perfectly as a circle, these are the only two places that only have one value. However, everything else has at least 2. That means this circle graph is not a function. So going back, our first graph is not a function because although the first half of it looks like, yeah, it only intersects once, the latter half looks like it has a few different places that has multiple outputs for a single input. Looking at graph 2, nowhere on this graph will you intersect twice if you draw a vertical line. It passes the vertical line test. Graph 3, almost everywhere except for the extreme endpoints on the x-axis, you will hit 2 values of y for a given x. That means it's constantly failing the vertical line test. This is not a function. Well, that concludes another session of Tutor Me Senpai. Today we went through an 8th grade topic, identifying a function by using the vertical line test. Now, I hope you were able to follow along, and I hope it wasn't too difficult. If you did have any questions, remember, you can always put those in the comment box below, or you can visit me on Facebook at Tutor Me Senpai. If you have any homework you would like to see on this channel, feel free once again to drop that off on Facebook at Tutor Me Senpai as well. If you like how I break things down and you would like more videos like this, why don't you leave me a like? It really helps the channel. Why don't you hit that notification bell and the subscribe button as well so you know exactly when I drop my next videos. That's all the time I have for today, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you again next week. I'm Courtney, and this is another session of Tutor Me Senpai.